Okay, so we've been talking about what I've learned, a series of things, talking about the different arts that I've studied and what I've learned from them. Today we're talking about Aikido. Hey, what's up? I'm Ken. This is kenfuTV, and each week I release videos in the martial arts, philosophy, technique, training, that sort of thing. And if that's what you're into, welcome, subscribe, hit that like, do all that stuff that people do on the internet these days. But mostly I appreciate it when you do. It really helps me out, and it means a lot. I think it's pretty cool that you guys are here watching crazy videos by a guy named Ken. So let's talk Aikido. This one will be footage light because I don't have a lot of footage of this particular thing. I've got some different videos of class or different stuff like that, but not a lot of video of my instructor. I do have a demo that he did at our dojo, so I will definitely show that. But let's talk about what I got from Aikido and how I feel about Aikido. A lot of people have a strong feeling. I mean, in the martial arts world, Aikido itself is just not exactly highly looked upon. It's considered incredibly impractical and a terrible art to learn for self-defense and all of this kind of stuff. And it won't work in the ring, it won't work in the ring, it won't work in the ring. And frankly, I get tired of hearing a lot of that stuff. I think any art won't work in the ring if you're not good at it and you don't train it properly. Well, maybe we'll get off topic for just a second anyway and just talk about the fact that what works in the ring are things that need to work in the ring. The ring fighting is a consensual fight. Two people know they're fighting each other, squaring off and going at it. Now they go at it hard and they have to overcome each other, and it takes incredible amounts of skill. 100% agree. But that is a context. It's a context of its own. So when somebody says something won't work in the ring, well, A, who's doing it? I don't think any particular art is excellent in the ring. I think particular artists are excellent in the ring. Not everybody moves like everybody else. When you see somebody do really, really well, people try to attribute that to the art. You need to be paying attention to the artist's ability to demonstrate that art. So there's two things that I want to talk about in order to talk about Aikido. First, what's its purpose? What's its context? It's certainly not the ring. Second, who's teaching it? Because their application, their understanding of it, and their application of it goes a long way. So on that first one, what's its context? Its context is self-protection. It is a self-defense art. It is termed by its creator the art of peace. I didn't look that up. That's the name of his book. I actually don't know if that is a term. I don't know if that is a term that O-sensei said, if that just became kind of what it was referred to as. Anyway, cite your sources, and I didn't. So instead, I'm just disclaiming that I didn't cite my sources because I don't have ones in this case. Even though I do have the book. I had to go get it because I don't. It's pocket sized, but I don't just carry it around. Though people do, and I think you should. It's an interesting book. Anyway, its intent, the idea, right, stems from Ueshiba's training in jiu-jitsu and other arts, and his culmination in his practice, his method of those things. So first and foremost, when it comes to Aikido, there is good and practical things there. He had a very specific approach, and the approach was about peace and about people who do violent things are sick in the head. And his intent was to control them and create opportunities where they could decide that they didn't want to do this rather than physically assault somebody. That was the idea. It requires two things, bringing it back to context. It requires first that someone be actively trying to attack you and not testing you out and maintaining range and that kind of stuff, but actively trying to hurt you in a way that is very defined and full of intent. That right there, if someone says Aikido doesn't work, it typically involves the fact that wasn't taking place. Now, I understand that's not always true. A person has to be able to manage space and distance and timing and defend themselves if somebody's just railing punches. If you get a really good boxer going after somebody doing Aikido who's not good at managing the punches of a boxer because of their speed and intensity, then they're going to struggle. But I don't believe that a good Aikidoka can't deal with a boxer. I don't believe that. Most of the time when you search things, any art versus any art, usually it's somebody pretty good at it or decently good at it and somebody who's not good at it at all. You get white belts doing stuff. Now, I'll say jiu-jitsu, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, you see a lot of the opposite. You do see more talent versus talent, or at least talented jiu-jiteros doing their stuff to other people, which conversation for a different video. But that context, right? And I said there were two things. The second thing is you have to actually understand what you're doing and and be able to apply it, which means you have to have practiced. You can't take somebody who's not good at Aikido and see them do Aikido and then say Aikido doesn't work. And I feel that way for every art. You got to check your sources. If the person is not good at it, don't base the whole art after how good they are. Also, if somebody's incredibly good, then the art itself, you can't just assume that anybody who practices that art will be that good. So that brings me around to my instructor. I trained at Aikido of Casper here in Casper by Sensei Gabe Phillips. I consider myself very fortunate to have started my Aikido journey with him specifically. His background being an Uchideshi in New York Aikikai, many opportunities to train with some really great practitioners of the art, led to him being a very skillful person. He's also incredibly introspective, and him and I, we align a lot in the ideas of the body and how this engages in the art. Now, that does not mean that I have not had a difficult time in the art. So when I first tried it, right, I found out ended up over there. I actually first got engaged by going over and taking pictures of the art, which was very, very cool. Had a really great time doing that. Came up with some really cool images. It was really awesome. It'd be a while yet before I actually stepped foot on the mat and trained. Did that for a short time, and then I didn't anymore. Not because of anything he did, not because of anything like that, but just because it wasn't the right time for me. At the time, I was being told by people like, hey, if you're going to do Aikido, it's not a bad idea to have a black belt in something else and then go do Aikido. I don't believe at all that they thought that you can't learn Aikido without having gotten to at least to a black belt somewhere else. I think they just understood that the quickness that you will pick up the art is much faster if you've gone through the process, right? The black belt in any art should encompass the idea of at least finally understanding your own body and being able to make it do the things that you ask it to. Because of that, stepping in and learning Aikido goes a lot smoother. The one downfall to Aikido as a self-protection art is it has one of the steeper learning curves as far as going from new student to functional. It just takes time. And most practitioners of the art appreciate the time that it takes and enjoy the process. And that is a very beautiful thing about that art. And I will never fault it for that, because honestly, that was one of my favorite things about it as well. So anyway, a lot of it for me was being split too many ways and having to refocus my time, and I already had an instructor and an art that I was following. So I stuck with that, and I rededicated my time to just that. Then after I had my black belt, I did actually end up back in there again. It worked out that another person I knew was training there too, so I went over and we started training and had a really good time getting started doing that. It definitely made a difference. I can promise you that it made a difference having a background and being more comfortable with my body, being able to make small adjustments and refine myself for what was being practiced that day versus learn it from scratch was significantly easier. But I think that's anything. I think if you have a black belt in one art and that black belt is well earned, that if you go to another art, you're gonna have an easier time. But that did not stop me from having the thoughts, right? I thought of really good karateka that I trained with, and I thought of Sensei Gabe, and I said, man, I wonder what this would look like. Like, I wasn't trying to compare me. Like, I wonder what this would look like if I fought. Instead, I want to see, like, I'd be interested in seeing what a really good practitioner of my root art and Gabe, who's a really good practitioner of his art, what that looked like, because I was used to the idea of a more competitive style sparring where you were testing each other out and you're feeding really fast punches and kicks, but you were pulling them back right away too so they didn't linger. So I went, man, how would this work? If somebody's not leaving their limbs out for you to grab them and do stuff with them, how does this work? Well, that's where I consider myself lucky training with Gabe. Gabe has an understanding of how the art applies, period. So we had a talk, we had a discussion about that, and he hit me. He struck and I reacted. I dealt with him striking me, which gave him the limb. I think all too often you see the practice method. You see people running out and they've got this arm kind of up, over exaggerated. They've got it up and they're just running in. But there are, I will also give Gabe credit. If people ran and the running was not this weird thing, it was you literally just got thrown to the ground. You stood back up and you immediately attacked again, which sometimes looked like at least a couple steps of running because you were going for it. It can be an incredibly exhaustive practice. So you get up, you charge in, you deliver the strike wherever the strike was going to be. If you're hitting for the head, whatever, you do that thing. They use whatever the technique that we're working in at the time, take your leverage, use the energy that you're putting in, and put you on the ground in one way or another, either throwing you in a big throw or pinning you in some way, controlling your body. If there was any great skill developed besides the understanding of how to move somebody's body, was also the ability to pin and control somebody on the ground. Falls right into the Japanese jiu-jitsu I already did. The other benefit of having already received a black belt in karate is karate had a strong connection to the Japanese jiu-jitsu, so I already had a lot of that material, and so it was more other ways to apply the jiu-jitsu. So seeing a lot of overlap and then solidifying in some ways, making it easier. The karate version of the jiu-jitsu is very direct, and I will make this happen. I will just overpower. I use strength if I need to, whatever it is, make it happen. Whereas the Aikido, a little softer, and I say that in its approach, not in its impact. It hurts. It works. When you get thrown well or slammed well and pinned down, like, it's not a comfortable thing. But the approach and how they got there is softer. And that is a huge thing that I took away. The ability to relax and be soft in my technique helped me engage that same mentality, that same function in my other arts. And I truly believe that the more soft and relaxed you're able to be when you apply your art, the more effective it is. And I've got many, many thoughts on that, and many, many times that I've proven that to myself and proven it with other students, testing it and seeing how it goes. And it's true. And I have thoughts on that. So maybe I'll talk about that in another video. So comment if you want to see a video like that at some point about how I feel about structure and musculature and relaxing in technique. But so because of that, because you see some variation, and like I said, really poor variations where people are just literally running from way too far away and that, that's an introduction to the idea of how to practice the mechanics of your part. So your technique, you're doing your technique, you need to practice and understand the mechanics of that part. As you get better, the attacks can be more spontaneous and more intentful and happen at closer ranges, and you can still perform the technique. Gabe was masterful at it. When you watched him move, we'd spar, and we've sparred around and stuff as friends. We are good friends and have done many times. We've got together. We had a thing we called Budo Buffet, where we just got together and we trained different things. We just shared ideas, and somebody start off with a technique, and then the other person would bring up, well, we have something like that and it looks like this, and we would just kind of cross back and forth and just spend a couple hours doing that, which was really, really fun. It was actually my first foray into YouTube. May it wither away and go. That was a younger Ken with younger thoughts. It was a lot of fun. I think if you did see those videos, you would probably find that there's been a lot of growth in me personally, which I'm very, very thankful for. So then apply the additional. So then, like I said, Gabe showed me exactly how this stuff applies when somebody doesn't want you to do it to them. And it's not that Aikido never strikes. He struck. He delivered a blow that made me react. He was intentful and moved in aggressively in a way that made me do something. And as soon as I did that thing, as soon as we had that attachment of limbs, he was throwing me. That's a big deal. And because of all the time that he had practicing that stuff, then he could tell the difference between a non-intentful strike and an intentful strike. I had started off with a method in some of my other arts where control was a thing. If I was going to hit, say this is a surface, if I hit, I stop. I control that so that I don't hurt you, right? That's a young student's method. Something that is good to do if you want to not have too many insurance claims is to make sure you have control until you know people are able to handle that accidents aren't going to happen, and then you step it up. It doesn't need to stop there. It should never stop there. I always, when I'm teaching the students and I see someone hitting off to the side or something like that, I remind them that it's the other person's job to defend themselves. You need to attack them so they know how to deal with being attacked. So because of that, there was a time where he came up to me and hit me here, and I came down. It was just a big hit, just hitting with the hand right into the face. But I would stop. I came in hard. He's like, no, hit me hard, go. And I went even faster, even harder, and stopped. And he grabbed my hand and went, hit me. So I hit him. Only I didn't. I did not. I then got up off the ground. because the moment I had intent and he could see that this would land, I was on the ground. He delivered technique. He took that from me and put me on the ground. All the Aikido non-believers right now are saying, yeah, but that's because he knew that that technique was coming. Well, first off, I say to you, yeah, it was a demonstration. We were working on that technique and he was demonstrating that technique. Second off, he could do it anyway, even if not. And third, the more you do those things, the more you develop the ability to read and know that that technique is coming. I very strongly believe that people who are really good at defending, even in the ring, I would argue especially in the ring, when they act like they knew that person was going to do that technique, it's because of all the little tiny tells that the average person doesn't see, that somebody who's seen it 1,000 times instantly picks up on and orients to dealing with that. I don't think any art is different in that way. The more you're exposed to those things, the better you are at reading them. So that brings me to another piece of the Aikido and the training that I really liked, which is we may only work on a handful of techniques in an evening, but you rep the hell out of them. If it's your turn to go, you throw, they put you down, you get up, you attack again, they put you down, you get up, you attack again. You're learning to receive technique, and you're learning to get up and have stamina. You go, you switch. Their turn. You go, you switch. And you do that for hour and a half, 2 hours, and it's not like some arts where maybe in karate we go do some kata for a little bit. Maybe you go do different things in your art. It was, here's the technique, and rep it the whole time. Now, I understand that might not be indicative of Aikido as a whole, but it was indicative of Gabe Sensei's Aikido and what I liked about it. You worked hard and you developed a good ability, and he made refinements to make it better, and that was it. He mostly would demonstrate, not really talk. He'd show you 2-3 times, and then you'd go do it. If you just needed a slight adjustment and he felt it was warranted, he would tell you what that adjustment was. If he felt everybody was missing something, then he would just stop everybody, demonstrate again, and then you'd go try again. So another benefit that came out of the Aikido was the ability to steal technique. The entire idea of how the practice is given from teacher to student is this idea that I will demonstrate, you will steal from me. You will steal the technique that I showed you. You will learn how to practice and deliver it on your own, and it will become your own technique. And that's great in 2 ways. 1, it forces you to be analytical and critical of what's happening. 2, it means that you did not learn his technique. You learned your adaptation of his technique to your body. That has been a strong thing in the continuation of martial arts for me as an instructor, is this idea of allowing students to steal the technique rather than force them to have exactly my technique. Now, I'll say in some of the times that we've sparred, him and I, and he'll probably disagree or maybe even hate me for saying this out loud, I will say that I performed better in the sparring, not because he didn't perform well, but because I was more trained in the idea of in and out and not delivering something with strong intent. So usually what would happen is he would change to fighting a little more like me, things that looked a little less like Aikido, building the aggression to make me react and then taking advantage of it, which I still find to be Aikido. The more I trained and the more I understood, the more when I tried to spar, I tried to take that dueling element out and be more intentful, because that's its usefulness. And every time without fail, had zero issue managing that. So I think the strongest thing that people miss when they're looking at Aikido is that the intent of the person attacking a practitioner of Aikido is everything. If you're playing around, if you're striking in and managing distance, this kind of stuff, it just really wasn't designed for it. Now, you take somebody like Sensei Gabe, who's really good at what he does, and then you train him up to have a correlating offensive, that kind of skill set, then the idea of sparring in this dueling thing becomes significantly easier, because now he has not only the way to manage all of the pieces of the end, but now is trained in all of the skills of the beginning, which him and my instructor share knowledge. They train under each other. And so that stuff's happening all the time. And that's the thing that I admire about him, is his knowledge never stopped. His growth never stopped. He's constantly pulling apart and reevaluating his art and redeveloping it to continue to make sense as he learns more about his body, the body's movement itself, the way the students are engaging with it. And so in general, I think I didn't do a good job of learning Aikido if you only look at what people want to call Aikido. And maybe perhaps a better way of saying is I had the opportunity to learn Aikijitsu from a very capable man whose lessons in movement and body knowledge and general sensitivity have continued to affect me to this day and always will. There are parts of my practice that are firmly rooted in things that I took from the training that we did together that have fundamentally changed pieces of what I even teach and who I am and what I do. I would love at some point actually to go further in the journey of Aikido, but that really comes down again to time, and splitting it too much makes it difficult. So there you go. That's a little bit of the background of the Aikido and how that affected me and some of the positive things that I took out of it. And truthfully, with this particular instructor, very, very few, if any, negatives. All in all, a great experience that really informed a fundamental part of my martial art in many ways. Amazing footwork, incredible ukemi, properly used strength and sensitivity, and a general softness to technique that actually makes technique harder and stronger. And lastly, just an understanding that Aikido does work, and sometimes Aikido throws the first punch. That's it for today. If you like this kind of stuff and you want to see more of what I do, make sure to subscribe here. You can watch a playlist of videos like this here, and here's a couple more I think you might like. I'm Ken, this is kenfuTV, and I'll catch you in the next one.